Good morning, San Joaquin, and welcome to a special edition of Tales and Tips. I'm so honored to have with me today Mark Armstrong, who wears many, many hats in the community, definitely a true community advocate. He is the CEO of the Fairgrounds in Lodi, and he is also the founder for Take Back Lodi. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And we've been trying to schedule an interview. I just admire everything that you're doing. And I really wanted to share with the community, for the people that are not aware, all the amazing things that you're doing to help in Lodi and beyond.
Well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So let's start with your day job, the
Okay.
CEO of the Fairgrounds, which also includes the Grape Festival and running other activities that take place there. How did you become involved with that?
I've always been in the fair and festival business, my whole working life. I grew up in Maine and started working at a small fair there. And I ended up on the West Coast through a little bit of a baseball career that I had. Played professionally with the Oakland A's for a while. And
Wow.
Ended up on the West.
Little known fact.
Yes. Yeah, ended up on the West Coast through that, and with the warm weather, really didn't want to go back to the East Coast to fight the weather, and ended up at the Arizona State Fair, worked there, and as we started to raise our children, my wife and I, we wanted to get to a smaller area, and the Lodi Grape Festival job came open, and that's how I ended up here 28 years ago, and
Wow.
it's been a great thing.
28 years.
Yes.
And I'm sure you can talk about huge transition in that facility and in events that are held there over that time.
It's when I first came to the Lodi Grape Festival, I felt the facility was underutilized. There was a lot of buildings that were kind of in disrepair, and we've done a lot of work to upgrade the facilities. There's been a lot of changes in the amount of events that we have. Most weekends, we have 3 to 4, sometimes as many as 5 events.
Wow.
Going on, whether it's a small wedding or a dog show. This weekend we have the home show. And there is it really is the community center for Lodi when it comes to events.
It's awesome. And it's a great facility. I've participated in several events there, from Festa Italiana to the fairgrounds, and there's Lions meetings there, and
Right.
It's just a wonderful venue. Ag meetings take place.
One
it's
thing
great.
is great is that we find that when people move their events or have their events there, we usually don't lose them. They come back year after year. Like the home show's been there a long time. Festa Italiana was great that they took a little hiatus from the event and came back, and I think it's doing very well. That cultural event is very important to our community, as all the events are, but having a nice place, safe place where they can have their event and make it affordable to them is something we try to do.
Definitely. And I'm going to give a shout out to Carrie Sass.
Oh, she's amazing.
She's awesome. And she's another wonderful community advocate. And I really like what you said about being a part of the community and trying to make it affordable. And there's some unique things that you have at the fairgrounds that help for that. You have the wonderful covered section that's an amphitheater, and all the buildings, and it's just a really nice landmark as well.
It is. The pavilion, the big building is 30,000 square foot building, and when people go in, they're amazed because of the big mural. But that building was built in 1937, which is,
Wow.
Older, but it still has a lot of character. There's been updating done to it. Our other buildings, like you'll see shaded areas that we've created. A lot of times things are created for the fair that we need during the fair, but they then get utilized by our events and kind of morph into other uses, which is great during the year.
That's awesome. So what's your favorite event that takes place?
I love the festival. It's my number one event. I love the setup part of it and everything that goes into it. But one that we're very proud of is the Wine and Food Festival. It used to be the Lodi Spring Wine Show, and when I came to the fairgrounds, like I said, 28 years ago, it was floundering a little bit in that there were a lot of wineries, but not a lot of tasting rooms, and our wine area was we were more into grape production than we were into making wine. And now over that time period, seeing, what do we have, like 80 tasting rooms, would become a wine center and a destination point. And so we transformed the wine show, which was a 2-day event. Now we have the Wine and Food Festival that brings people in from all over. I mean, you can't get a room that weekend. And it really is a great advertising opportunity for our wineries, but a great introduction for people to our area, which has a lot to offer. And there's a lot of little tasting rooms. There's the bigger tasting rooms. A lot of them you go into, and the owners there, the winemakers around. And we're proud that we didn't give up on that event. We saw it struggling in that it over 2 days, the wineries had a hard time coming for the 2-day period. We made it a 1 day. We've really upped the class of it, so to speak, and I think it's a very important marketing tool for not only the wineries but for Lodi and the restaurants.
And probably as a result of that and other events, we're having more hotels built in the community.
We are.
Because, as you said, there's not enough room for people that want to visit, and tourism is really important to the thriving of Lodi.
I think getting some more hotels is essential to the success of Lodi. And we deal with it at fair time, where a lot of our people and entertainers need hotel rooms. We're starting to book them now to make sure that people have rooms and they have the things that we need to provide. And I do know, like for Wine and Food, the rooms are all sold out in Lodi. And I'm sure other events like Zinfest, Street Fair, they find the same thing, that more rooms will only help bring more people into Lodi. Because if you're going to a wine show and you're coming from San Francisco, the last thing you want to do is drive home at the end of the night.
Definitely, especially after you've been consuming adult beverages and enjoying, and you're tired.
And our time has changed. Like in 28, 30 years ago, people didn't think as much about drinking and getting in the car as they do now, and also, we have Uber, we have Lyft, they can get rides. And also around Lodi, I see things developing like SIP shuttle, where you can get rides. In the hotels, a lot of the hotels have a shuttle, so you can come, party, go eat, get a ride back to your hotel safely, and those things have changed a lot.
Definitely enjoy and not stress. And I think change is key, because you mentioned how many of these events have modified or morphed with the times and adjusting with the times. And to me, that's critical, because if you stay the same, then eventually you're behind. But if you're adjusting to the demand, then you're going to just grow like Lodi is. Exactly.
And I'm 62 years old, so every day is a learning process with media, with social media, with what the younger generation, who are our consumers now, what they're using for, say, advertising or rides, or how they find hotels, how they find events. And it's a learning process. Like, we're sending our staff next week to a big social media workshop in Portland, Oregon, to learn how we can keep up. This year at the wine show, we had to create a Lyft and Uber pick up and drop off spot, which is the first time we've ever had to do that. And I think that's awesome, because there were years we had one taxi in Lodi, and that's just not enough to get everybody where they're going.
Well, and now in addition to hotels, Airbnb is so popular with the younger crowd. And Leadership Lodi, we recently were at Visit Lodi, and they were talking about how they're marketing to San Francisco and LA to try and get that market to come to Lodi and see what we have to offer. And just like you said, the owners of the wineries are there. It's so personable. It's so small town and warm and welcoming. It's so different than any other area that you can go to wine taste.
I think so. And I've heard a lot, we want to be Napa. We want to be, a wine region like Napa. We're not. We're unique. We're our own area. We need to develop our own personality, which I think Lodi is realizing that through many organizations that do push it. And even for the Grape Festival and the wine show and our beer fest, which we have 3 weeks after the wine show, is that we do market in the Bay Area, and they are great clients. It's like it's become a very big part of what we do for our marketing is to get outside our immediate area, because I think it's a situation where the local people can go wine tasting every single weekend. They can pick and choose, but when you have an event as big as we do, we need to get people in. And it once you go down through downtown and you go to Wine and Roses and you go to some of the businesses and some of the great new tasting rooms, I think you're really impressed with what Lodi's presenting.
Definitely. And we want to be a wine destination, but we want to be more welcoming.
Right.
And to me, the other thing that's magnificent and I think really enjoyable is that the wineries are spread out in different locations. It's not all on one main street. And so
Right.
you're not in a line of cars waiting
Right.
to go to places. And they're all quaint. They all have their different culture or their different type of wine. They might have artwork and other things. And it's really nice.
It is. I enjoy, we have to go around to the wineries and bring them literature and so forth when we get ready for our events. And the transformation even from one year to the next of what they're doing in their wineries. And I think that people need to see a lot of them feature local artists. They have a unique feel, and a lot of people are doing things to make their wineries venues for weddings and events that, again, bringing a lot of people into our area.
Which is wonderful. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, what do they say? The multiplier, if a dollar comes into the community, it multiplies 9 times, which
is great. That's huge.
Yeah.
And you mentioned beer. Let's talk about beer, because the millennials tend to like beer more than wine, or maybe a mix of both.
Right. We had we created our beer fest just because of that. I mean, I listened. I have 4 great critics of what I do. My 4 kids. They're from 31 to 25, and they were into the craft beers, and I happen to like craft beer myself. Not much of a drinker, but I like exploring and seeing what the different beers are, and so we created the beer fest, and we wanted to make it a little different. We have a lot of ciders there and things, and that transforms every year. Like one year it was the big caramels and root beers and peanut butter beer, and now it seems like it's going it's changing. There's a lot of seltzers that are beer based. The beer changes, the cider, heavy on the IPAs, but and the thing that's exciting is we have a lot of local breweries that are
Yes.
now popping up. Like,
And the craft beers.
oh yeah, and I think people also want to go and learn. I see people asking questions all the time of the people at the booths. You know, what makes it different? Why? You know, and the kids are educated. I say kids, but the 21 to 35, they're educated about what they're buying. They're great consumers. They're not going to buy something that they don't like.
Or that's not high quality.
No, and this gives them a chance to go and explore and ask questions. And where is your brewery? And it brings people to their breweries to actually, you know, we have 3 or 4 that have popped up in Lodi. They're very popular. 5 Windows,
5 Windows is
Idle,
awesome.
High Water. I went there.
They're having their grand opening.
I enjoyed their
Tamaris.
their beer. Yeah, and it's I think we said the word before. It's a whole culture of people. You go in, they have live bands. It's a great atmosphere. Even at my age, it's really fun to go and hear the live bands and see people playing cornhole, and you know, some of them even have areas where they can bring their kids or dogs and, you know, have a night out.
It's fun, and it's something different, and I love that our community is becoming a mecca for
It is, and you just see downtown, and you see different areas of the city just building up because of these high traffic areas that are drawing, you know, people to those areas. You know, you go down Main Street in Lodi on a Saturday night, and there's people walking everywhere, whether it's at the theater or the new restaurant that just opened in town, Brick House,
across from the theater.
Yeah, and those things help, and they I saw the pedicab riding around, giving people rides from restaurant to restaurant. It's
And
fun.
that's nice too. And
Yeah.
and I think we have a walk for Halloween coming up that
Yes.
celebrates the downtown.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are excited about that.
Yes.
So on the flip side of that, we've also had our issues with homelessness.
Right.
And you created an amazing organization to help to work with that. Let's
Right.
talk about that. Take Back Lodi.
How that kind of came about, I got to give my wife credit, is I kept complaining about the homeless that were around the fairgrounds, and she said, "Well, you got to do something about it. Get involved." And that's how Take Back Lodi started. We had a community open house, a meeting where people could come in and give their opinions, and that kind of it didn't really accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, but it gave people a chance to give their opinion of what they thought about homeless. Most of it was very negative. So we selected from that group of people some business leaders in town, and that's how Take Back Lodi started. We didn't want to be that negative group that was just constantly barraging the government to say, get rid of the homeless, get rid of the homeless. We kind of educated ourselves of what the problem was. It's not unique to Lodi. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And so what we wanted to do, it was great timing because they were creating the homeless liaison police officer in Lodi. I think he's called community liaison. And we worked closely with him. It was Ryan Holt. And we kind of found out, that there were things that could be done. Most of what we saw was garbage and the remnants of where homeless people had lived. We also saw a lot of vandalism and so forth going on in businesses around Lodi. So Take Back Lodi gives people a little bit of a voice, and rather than it gives it a united voice. So instead of 150 people screaming at the council, we can go in with our voice and say, we see this, we've done this. One simple thing we did was a shopping cart collection program.
Huge
We had
number
no
of shopping
idea.
carts.
We had thousands now that we've picked up, and they're brought to the fairgrounds, and we have the shopping cart collection people come there on a regular basis and pick them
Awesome.
up. But I'm always amazed at how many shopping carts are out on the street, and the cost of those carts. I think at one point we had close to 30 carts from Big Lots, and I went over there and they're like, "Yeah, we have like 3 carts left." I'm like, "Well, we got 30 of them at the fairgrounds. Come get them." They're $300 or $400 a piece. It's like,
They're expensive.
So-
That gets passed on to the consumer.
right. And there is an ordinance in Lodi, like there is in a lot of towns, that you can't use a shopping cart for anything other than shopping, I think. But again, that's an enforcement issue. It's like, how much time do we put into enforcing having people take their things out of a shopping cart and take the shopping cart and the whole thing. But it's been maybe that's a little bit of an aesthetic thing for Lodi, but they're definitely, once one gets left, somebody will call, and we put out through our little system, "Hey, can you pick up a shopping cart on corner of Maple and Cherokee?" And it usually gets done fairly quickly.
And to me, that's the part that's exciting. You talk about it as a voice, but it's far more than a voice. You're boots on the ground,
Right.
And you're actually making a concrete difference, and you're giving people a way to help to make it better.
Right. And it's not, we're not about meetings. We don't, get together monthly and air out all our grievances. What we do is we usually schedule cleanups, and we ask people to meet, and we go with the help of the police department, with zoning, code enforcement. We'll go to a particular area. We started with some really huge cleanups along the river. There was a place called Camp America where there were like 70 tents set up. We worked with a landowner and the surrounding residents to that area to go in there and clean it up. We had like 25 huge dumpsters that were taken out of there, and people brought the machinery to get it cleaned up, and that stayed clean. We have to protect that river and that
Definitely.
area, and when we go into those places, it's a lot of garbage, but it's also things that have been taken from people, and it's not right. But we just go and clean. We don't interact with the homeless. We let the authorities do what they need to do. And if you're illegally on a piece of land, then we let them handle it, and then we go and do the cleanup.
Well, and going back to what you said, depending on the area where people might be, there's concern for pollution with the water,
Right.
there's concern for damage to the levees, and there's also public health concern
Right.
in terms of spreading of disease. When you go on these cleanups, though, you said that you are partnering with other groups. So if people reach out or want help, is that possible when the
Yes.
cleanups are happening?
Most cases, and I know you could probably get a little more information from our liaison officer, Dan Shealy, but they do outreach. I think it's once a month they go do that. But before we even go into an area, the police officers go in, and a lot of times they bring their support teams, which do include people that have, whether it's the Salvation Army or mental health or health organizations that they deal with through the county. Help is offered to people, and every now and then they'll get a person that accepts that help and takes it, and it's just getting the people to break away from that horrible rut they're in and go get the help that's available to them and get straight and get back on track.
And we all know that drugs can be a huge component of this, as is mental illness,
Right.
other ailments,
Right.
and it can be very hard to break down those barriers.
And I think, like we all get in ruts. We all have had the time in our lives where we got to reach down, grab our bootstraps, and turn the corner and do what we need to do to get our life back on track. What I see that's most disturbing is there's a lot of people that are, and I'm not saying beyond help that is offered by these outreach groups, but there's so much mental health. And I think that's probably more the older group in that they have mental health problems, and there isn't really a solution to that, to go into a long-term facility, which I think people need. But the younger people, I think that 99% of them that I've dealt with in the homeless situation, it's drugs. And it's sad because
It's very sad.
they become, if they don't get out of that situation, they become the people we deal with when they get to be 40 or 50, that the drugs have just taken such an effect on them that they're just, they're
function.
not employable. They can't function in a normal environment. And I get sad when I see, and I do talk to people. Like, we have several people at Lawrence Park that live by our facility that I've even got to know. Then I ask them, like, how'd you get into this? What happened? And blah, blah. They all have a sad story. But when you say, there's a lot of help out there. Yeah. Like, you almost have to just keep forcing it on them, It's just a bad situation.
Bad situation.
Yeah.
And the other group that saddens me are the veterans that
Right.
are out on the street, because they made the ultimate sacrifice
Right.
for us, for our freedom. Our freedom is not free. And to know that there's veterans out on the street is just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, the American Legion and even our community liaison officer, they work hard to make sure that they do everything they can to get the vets the help they need. I know there's a guy in Lodi. He's a vet. He's homeless. He's chosen to be homeless, but they try to get him to the VA, and he gets like almost there, and then he just can't make it work. But we owe those people every effort we can to.
Definitely.
And I don't judge. Like, I don't know what my home life was excellent. I growing up, we weren't rich or anything like that, but my parents were loving and caring, and who knows what some of these people have been through. That they're going to take a massive effort on the part of a lot of people to turn the corner, to see that there is, there is light at the end of the tunnel if they're willing to put the work in too.
Definitely. And what you said is key. They have to be willing to put the work into it. If it's something that's legislated that they have to do it,
Right.
and they fight it, no one benefits from that.
No. I think that that you hear all the time about what the causes of this is, and it seems to be escalating in California. But I was in Maine which I mentioned earlier is my home state, and in Bangor, Maine, they have a population of 28,000 people, and they have about 80 more homeless people documented than Lodi does,
Wow.
which has a much larger population.
Wow.
And you would think in a cold weather environment like that, but it goes back to, I think, a situation where how many services are there for them, what housing is available, and so forth. But they have the same situation we do. People in their parks, the crime rate is high in the area where the homeless people are. So we're all fighting the same thing. And unfortunately, nobody's come up with a solution. And I think one thing in California that I'd point my finger at is when we pass laws that I can't understand all of them, but like the $950, you have to steal more than $950 to be considered a criminal. Well, that doesn't make any sense
help.
to me, you know.
I'm sure that was to keep the jail population
Right.
down because the jails were probably overly full.
Right.
But on the other side of that coin, then you have people that have committed significant crime and they're
Right.
out on the street.
Well, and I talked to a big box store, and I said, why don't you have security guards? Why don't you? Well, it's all the liability issue of chasing somebody into the parking lot, and who knows what's going to happen. One acceptable loss rate of a big business in Lodi in a year was $600,000.
Wow.
And to me, that's like,
Wow.
we got to find a way to solve that problem,
Yes.
you know. And that goes back to you and I, in that when we go to that store, we're paying a higher price for the item we buy because of the, you know, the loss rate. But I think it's just in our time here on Earth, the society has changed.
Society has definitely changed.
I think that putting hard work into getting an average day's pay is harder and harder to find that person that's going to do that. And
Definitely.
I think that people have to put their heads together and try to find solutions that work. Getting all the people in a room that are involved in this, whether it's building a shelter or building, getting the governor to realize that legislation put a big strain on everybody, and I know that building jails and so forth is very expensive, but it's also very expensive to communities that start seeing, you know, less tourists, less people coming to their city because of the tent
Definitely.
cities that are out. And,
Definitely.
you know.
And jails are very expensive housing.
Right.
And it's hard. I think there definitely has to be a balance. And just like you said, times have changed and we need to adjust to the changes to make sure that we're doing things that are smart.
Right. Well, I think that, you know, when you look at a guy who gets ticket after ticket after ticket for doing one thing, like stealing or for trespassing or so forth, there's no end consequence for it. What does he care? Like, give me another ticket. I don't care. You know, it's one.
It doesn't have
guy,
relevance.
No, one guy we dealt with in particular had 39
Wow.
tickets, and finally he
Wow.
did jail time. But
Wow.
something's broken with that system, and it's nationwide. It's not just California. Almost every town that you would go into, I would think, you know, everybody says we're moving out of state. We're moving out of state.
It's not going to solve it.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
It
you
may
can
not
move out.
be-
You can move way out into the hills, and you know,
Still
that's
there.
yeah.
And California is true, I think has 50% of the homeless. And I agree
Right.
the weather is a big contributing factor, but it's everywhere.
Yeah, and it like, I think San Francisco is an amazingly sad case study for the homeless. When you look at how many people are laying on their streets, and you know, they try to figure out what to do with bathrooms, try to figure out what to do with showers. You know, you put bathrooms in, 2 days later they're destroyed. You know, like,
You need
what
security.
does it, I want to say, okay, you homeless people are laying on the street. What do you want? Like, they give you services and they're abused. You give them, you know, like it, and I don't think they have an answer either. It's like,
And I don't think it's everyone that is abusing them,
No.
but it only takes one, it only
That's
takes
exactly
two,
it.
and it ruins it for
That's
everyone.
exactly it. And we run into that at work. Like, we built a beautiful new shower facility and a bathroom facility was going to be used by all the vendors at the fair. This is about 15 years ago. First day we went in there and there was a sink knocked off the wall. There was a toilet. So we closed it and we gave them portable toilets. And, that is a perfect example. It was probably 2 people out of 100, and now we have people that monitor it and so forth. But that's the case. I think one person spoils it for a lot of people in a lot of cases, not just the homeless society.
But one thing that you said when you were talking about the shopping carts, which was awesome, is that people are now unified and they're watching.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so key, is working together and looking out for each other, because with any issue, people united are going to be able to achieve more.
Right. And I see Lodi's groups that are all working for the same end result, which is to reduce homelessness, reduce crime, reduce the whole thing. They're all starting to kind of interweave together. And while some people just choose to be angry and voice their opinion, I think more people are putting their boots on the ground and starting to work, how do we work this? Do we work it with Caltrans? Do we work it with the county? Do we work it with Lodi? And I see the people starting to overlap. Like, if we all work together, it's a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think, Lodi, one thing I see that's very tough is we don't have enough police officers. And it's very hard. They'll say, okay, we're going to hire 10 more police officers. Well, during that time, 6 might retire or go. The younger generation today will job hop more than our generation would.
Definitely.
And so they find a better wage. They find it that they'll job hop quicker than we would. So it's like a catch-22. You want to hire more officers. You pass Measure L to get more officers, but it's hard to get officers. So
and we don't want it to be a rotating door either.
No.
We want to train people that are great people and keep them there.
Right. And see that through their hard work in that one police force, they're going to move up and they're going to make a difference.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And to me, making a difference is key. And I love that you spoke earlier about people taking action and not just talking.
Right.
Talking the talk doesn't do a lot. It's walking the walk.
No, it doesn't. Like, we have, we're trying to get a Facebook or get away from Facebook for Take Back Lodi and go more to I keep moving your camera.
It's all good.
It's to get more to a website type thing where Facebook can be counterproductive in that we have over 1,000 members. There's probably 30 to 75 really active that when you do a big cleanup, you get them there. Other people just want to be able to in Facebook, a lot of times it ends up being an argument, and I'm like, delete. That's not why we're here. We're not there to slam. We're not there to slam the supervisors or the police or the Lodi City Council. We need them. We want to work. We don't want to talk, and that I think makes it special. And I hope other towns. I've gone with the outreach officer to several places when we talk to other people about their problems and how they can do it, and it really starts with the citizens.
Definitely.
There's a lot of
effort.
Yeah, there's a lot of things citizens don't understand. What's legal, what's not legal, how to protect your own property, that type of thing. I think it's important for downtowns to get back to having officers patrolling the downtown, even on bikes, and it's a 24-hour thing. It's not just peak business hours.
Definitely.
Type thing,
Definitely.
Yeah.
More eyes and ears, boots on the ground, watching.
And you have to remember that when you walk by a business and there's a homeless person laying in the doorway, that's not the business's fault. They don't, but there are ways to keep people from laying in your doorway. You go through the steps. You might have to do some construction changes. You might have to do, and believe me, I have compassion for people. Who knows what their situation is, but there's plenty of help. There's a lot of help.
Well, and we're working on having more help. You and I were talking about the homelessness task force and working on an emergency shelter. And I was surprised to see how much support there is for that. And
Right.
you and I talked about it, and I know you support it as well. And it also, I think, if we have more shelter available, more people can be off the street, and it also gives you the ability to then enforce some
Right.
of the laws and the codes better because there's somewhere for people to go.
Right. And I think, like, it's funny. We were doing a cleanup, and I was walking down along the highway, and I had a orange bag in my hand, and I was picking up trash, and somebody yelled out of the car, "Hey, go get a job." Well, they thought I was picking up cans and bottles and so forth. And I started thinking about that night, and my wife and I sat down and we were talking. I said, $15 or $17 an hour, when you add that up over 40 hours, it's pretty hard to get out of that rut and get, how does a guy get up in the morning that doesn't have a house, doesn't have a car? How does he get to work? How does he ever build up that nest egg to get to where he needs to be? And I think that's through services. That's through things like Ready to Work, which has really been successful. And we worked with them closely when it first started. They came and helped us do a lot of cleanups.
Francis.
Yes, and we would always.
Awesome.
The Ready to Work program was great. We through the county, they would come. They had a van. They were learning how to do landscaping. We'd buy them pizza, and I tried to walk around and talk to the guys, and they all felt really good about what they were doing, that they were getting back on their feet, and they were clean, but if you don't have, we take for granted, I think, sometimes getting up in the morning and yeah, you'll be looking in the other room before I get done. Taking a shower and putting on clothes and going to work and having a purpose. I think
having a purpose.
I have
huge.
a friend that has been fighting cancer for 10 years, and he says there's a way to find joy in every day, but you have to have a purpose, whether that's being involved in your church or helping somebody else. You have to have a purpose to get up and go to work. And he said a lot of people have just lost their spirit,
Yes.
and that's. But I see people over in the park sometimes, and they don't look like your regular homeless. I try to make an effort to talk to one guy in particular, Ron, who had been displaced. He had a falling out with his kids. He lost his job. He had a back problem, and he finally was able to get his stuff together, and he's moved on, and he's, I think,
Wonderful.
Yeah, but
That's rare.
It's rare, and I think, you see towns. I love the program where they're using homeless people to help do cleanup. They actually get paid for it. Then they can, prove that they have worth, and that they have self-confidence or even self-worth.
Self-value,
which
yes,
is
that's
like,
huge.
if you don't feel good about yourself, how can anybody else feel good about you? But I think all the things like John Ledbetter's doing, and we all have to work together. I'm not a big proponent of the tiny home thing. I think that the money could be poured into a bigger solution. But John and I agree on one thing: is mental health and a place to put the people so they can get back on their feet.
And I think the tiny home thing came into play because of the funding, the
Right.
amount of funding
Exactly.
that's available. If there was more funding available, I'm sure that they would have looked at
Exactly.
a bigger, like an apartment style something.
Right, and I think in any of those situations, there's all kinds of factors that we don't know about. Like if you want to buy a hotel, then you have to have housing, or an apartment complex. You have to find housing for the people you displace. Yet the cost of it, once they find out that it's a government agency going to buy the property, then the price goes through the ceiling. Like when I try to listen before I speak. Sometimes I get emotional when I talk about this situation, but it all makes sense. But there's roadblocks in everything we do.
Yes.
There's always a way to get over those roadblocks.
Yes,
and say,
but
okay,
it's slow. It
it's
takes
one
time.
step at a time.
It's effort.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what happens in Modesto because they're taking down their tent city.
Right.
And I believe they've purchased some hotels to start to provide more permanent housing.
Right.
And it's challenging.
Right. I think that in reading about tent cities and places where I think back east they started that. I watched a documentary, I think it's called Under the Bridge, where they let people live under the bridge. They actually put porta-johns and they put shower facilities and they gave them tents and the whole thing. And it started out as 50 people and ended up 800. And like then it was a major problem. And that wasn't the solution. And like I said, the 50 originals, probably 49 of them were great people who took advantage of the situation and didn't get outside the boundaries. But when you get 800 people in one area, you have a lot of problems.
That's a huge
That's
number
a society.
of people.
That's
Yes.
a town.
That's a huge number of people. And I do think Modesto has had some successes, and I think people have transitioned off the street, but definitely it's not a permanent solution.
No, and you hear all the time, like at our meetings, well, I drive through Elk Grove and I don't see any homeless. They're there.
They're there.
They're in every town, whether they've gone to a riverbed or behind an apartment complex. They're there, no matter what town it is. And I'm also, some of my views are a little different in that I think people have to earn their way a little bit. Like,
Definitely.
to get a free meal, you should have to do something for it. You should have to clean for
Clean,
it or
yes.
clean yourself up. Clean.
Or help someone else.
Yeah.
think-
Prove to me that you're willing to get off drugs with the help that's available, be clean, make a move. But that's easy for me to say because I don't have that problem.
And it's very hard. I can tell you, my husband is the past director for Gospel Center Rescue Mission, and for 25 years, he worked with people directly that were struggling on a day-to-day basis. And it really is a day-to-day issue. I think it's a lot harder to get over that than people realize.
Right.
But I agree with you that there are a lot of organizations to help. And if we are going to invest money and time and effort into people, they should have a vested interest in it as well.
And I think, I don't know if this is a popular opinion, but one situation we had at the fairgrounds was when the Star Hotel burned. We took in those people and they, through the Red Cross, they stayed with us for a week or so. And, I think that we all know the kid growing up that was in his class that didn't fit, and there's a lot of people in the homeless society that never fit, no matter what level of development they were in, whether it was as a kid or they're just an outsider and I think when that kid that doesn't fit finds other people that don't fit, they tend to be a little bit on the edge, and whether it's going to drug use or whatever it is, I think we have a lot of people out there that just never fit or never got that chance, like along the way, and they got to get at some point so frustrated with that situation.
Well, and it's hard. And you made a very valid point, is that we have no idea what someone has gone through or what it's like to walk in their shoes.
No. And I think, a lot of criticism people give to homeless people, and you're very close to this situation, is they'll have a dog or they'll have a cat or whatever. That's the only thing they've ever had that loves them unconditionally. And having a dog, I know that no matter how bad a day I've had or good day or whatever it is, you walk in and that dog's having a great day because you're home, but and I never judge, and a lot of times that dog or that pet is what keeps them from getting into a shelter. But when you talk about giving up that pet, they're not going to go that way.
They're not going to do it.
No, they're not going to go that way.
There's actually a couple organizations that I'm working with in Stockton that have worked on solutions for that. We're looking at building a shelter at one facility, and there's another organization that has reached out to another group to foster the animals. And I think those are great solutions, because as many barriers as we can take away that stop people from getting help, we need to keep doing that.
Right. And I think, there are people that don't take care of their pets, and sometimes they go for a long period of time to a tree. But we have people that do. I know that there have been pets taken, and they try to find them the foster home they need or whatever, and that there needs to be a place where they can go and know that once they get straight, they can get their animal back.
Definitely.
And trust that.
Definitely.
Because there's not much of a trust factor there between police
They don't trust
officers.
anyone.
No, because they've been screwed over many times, and we have to build that up, and you can't just eliminate the places where they can camp. You have to offer something else, and that's why I'm intrigued by the big warehouse or a place to put the homeless people, that they'll actually go where it's not. I think that you'll hear all the time when they talk about a facility is not in my backyard. Where can it be that it's put in the right place, that it's serviceable and that it's safe?
And we're never going to agree on that. There's
No.
always going to be some complaint about some location, but it gives us an opportunity to give a hand up instead of just a hand
I
out.
agree totally on that. Yeah.
All right. Anything that you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
The only thing, we talked about the festival a little bit, and one thing that going into the festival, we draw 70,000 people in 4 days, and this was one
That's
of those.
outstanding.
Yes, and one of the things that was a big issue this year was security, and I think we touched on it a little while ago. Our society has changed, and a lot of things have happened over the last 10 years
A lot of horrible
that
things.
we're always watching. One thing, my son and I were thinking about going to the movie The Joker in Vegas. He goes, "Dad, I think I'm gonna let it be out for a while before I go. I feel funny about." And I'm like, I never thought of that. And now, but with the festival, we're kind of on the heels of what happened in Gilroy, and there's been the nightclub shootings and the things like that. So there was a lot of pressure, a lot of calls, a lot of concerns about what we were going to do with security. So we have an unbelievable police chief. I'm sure you've met him, Todd Patterson, who
He was out on the Peace Walk, and
Yes.
I thanked him for doing that.
Yes, he's awesome. And the thing that we thought was, as soon as that happened, I think the Monday after, we talked about getting ahead of it, getting ahead of all the questions to be able to say, this is what we're going to do for the festival. And keep in mind that we have really, over the last 10 years, geared up a lot and spent a lot more money on what we do with metal detectors and cameras and more police officers and that type of thing. But this heightened awareness, we wanted to be able to show the public what we were doing in addition. And Todd and Officer Versteeg, who was our lead with the police, he really did an unbelievable job. And one of the most sensitive things was they were going to carry it. There were 6 officers that would be carrying rifles, and carrying rifles. Immediately, I thought of Europe. When you go there, the police officers are definitely carrying rifles, and I never felt unsafe there, and it didn't intimidate me. But that isn't the United States. That isn't what we're used to. So the rifles are strapped to the front of the officers, and if you can carry a rifle discreetly, they were doing a pretty good job of that. But getting on top of that, we added cameras, and that solely was the work of Shad Canestrano with the police department, who I think you know.
Yes, my leadership Lodi compadre.
He brought those in. They worked with a county law enforcement organization. They brought in explosive sniffing dogs, and I think it was used as kind of a training for them, but we don't care as long as it was being used. Did that before the fair opened. We had 2 drones that were flying the fairgrounds, and again, I think it was a great chance for the police officers to use their tools in a large community gathering. So happy to report that, and we're a small group, so when it gets busy at the gates, it's not unusual to see us out there helping with bag searches during the wanding. And I always tend to be by the main gate. My other employees are by the other gates, but in searching bags and seeing people come through, they were all really receptive to the only one negative man was said, "It's sad we have to do this." And I looked at him, and must have given him one of the looks. He goes, "I'm not unhappy with it, but it's sad we have to do this today." And he was my age, so he remembers walking onto a plane with whatever you want to take on. But through the whole fair, 70,000 people. We had 5 arrests. There were 5 arrests, which I don't know the details of. Probably had to do with alcohol, if I had to guess. I don't have that report. There were 25 ejections. Usually what that is that you may have a person who's starting to look at somebody wrong, or they're giving the carnival people a hard time, or they're just being out of line. And we have like a no tolerance policy, just go, and they'll escort them out. And then we had 17 traffic tickets given outside the fairgrounds. And usually what that is, our street is one way during the fair. People will come out and turn left instead of right and end up with a traffic ticket. But when you think about the volume of people that we put through there and how few problems we actually had, very proud of what our security did. And Todd was unbelievably supportive. The city was supportive. We also had a major construction project going on, and our street finally got paved the Friday before the fair, which is great. And we had a lot of things going on, and to know that people had our back and were willing to jump in, because in some situations, the police is more concerned about the town, and the event kind of has to fend for themselves. Definitely not the case in Lodi.
Right.
And when something happens like did in Gilroy, my heart goes out not only to the community, but those groups that put on that event. The money goes directly back into the community. And like in our group, we have the Lions Club, we have the Key Club, we have the Rotary, people don't realize the partners who work the gates, they get paid, they make money. Everybody makes money from that event. And when Gilroy, I'm sure they're having some tremendous soul searching over what they're going to do with their event. And that hurts the community.
Definitely.
And I think you just have to work to step up your game and pray that this phase that our society's going through goes away. And I don't get it. I don't understand it, but it's just the sign of our times. It's like technology, like everybody needs Wi-Fi now. So it's like everybody needs security every step of the way.
But how wonderful is it that our police chief and our police department was there to support the event? And that's a win-win for them too, if they were able to do unique special training that they don't always get to do, and also connect with the community, because to me that's also very important. People need to value our police.
Right.
And that's also another change that's going on, and it's sad. It's sad to me that officers are being shot for no reason other than they're wearing a uniform.
Yeah.
And that needs to change.
I don't know if you remember, but growing up, I was scared of the mailman because he wore a uniform. And what the consequences was, if I had done something wrong, the consequences when I got home by my dad were going to be way worse than they were by the peace officers. So I think that it all starts at home, where we respect that police officer. He's there to help you, not hurt you. And I did see a lot of times during the fair that there would be a parent or a couple parents, and they would have kids, and they were asking the police officers questions, even the ones that were carrying rifles. What kind of rifle is it? How do you train? Blah, blah, blah. And that's just part of it. And feeling comfortable to have respect for that police officer, because they do something that's incredible, and it takes a unique individual, and like any money that communities can put into law enforcement and having more officers, I think it's money well spent.
Definitely. And we need our community police officers back, our community sheriffs as well.
We do. I was saddened when I heard, because when they cut the community car thing, and I did talk to the guy who we had dealt with, especially in the Woodbridge area, because I would just call him. I happen to know him, but I would call him and say, hey, when you're going by the bridge at Woodbridge and by the country club, there's a couple people down there. I saw some smoke, and within a couple days you get a call, hey, will you go get your guys to go clean that stuff up? And we kind of worked with the water district there, and when they cut the community cars, that was like another resource. But I think it'll come back.
It'll come back.
I think I
I think there was
yeah.
a message recently that it's on its way back. So
Right.
I'm hopeful.
And I think, you know, you have people that want to be vigilantes and they want to take it in their own homes, on their own hands. That's not the way to go. That's not going to, you know, like just going into a community
I agree.
camp. It's you never know what you're walking into.
It can be very dangerous.
Very. With the dogs, you never know what weapons are in there. And one thing that scares me every time we go do a cleanup, tons and tons of needles.
Mm-hmm.
And all it takes stepping on one needle or, you know, so. But I think it's easier to look at the positive side of things than the negative. I think more people need to do that and get involved and find out how you can get involved. Like some people say, well, I'm physically disabled. I can't do a cleanup. Go get a couple cases of water when we do a cleanup and bring it out for the
Awesome.
volunteers. And we have had people do that.
Will you share your website and your Facebook page?
Our Facebook page is Take Back Lodi, and there are the only way you can be accepted as a member on there. It's a private group. There's 3 questions you have to answer. If you don't answer the questions, you're not accepted. So answer the questions honestly. We're working on our getting a website done. One of our members is working on doing that. But
Awesome.
if people want to call me about shopping carts or whatever in the Lodi area, 369-2771, or they can email me at mark@grapefestival.com.
Awesome. And thank you so much for
No,
being
thank
here
you.
today. Thank you for all that you're doing in the community.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Good. We got to get you out to the fair next year. Or maybe
Well, I
one
was
of our
there.
other
I was
events.
there,
You were
but
volunteering.
I was there at the fair the last day. I
Yes.
was able to go. And it was amazing. I had no idea, though, that you had 70,000 people
Oh,
in
yeah.
4 days. That's
Yeah.
pretty phenomenal.
And you know, the community support is incredible. When the first 3 days were very hot, people came. They volunteer. We couldn't put the fair on without it, and it's just a great community event, and it's fun.
It's
You're like,
awesome.
we have a lot of volunteers through the Grape Festival that come out. They work a couple of hours, whether it's pouring wine or pouring beer, and then I'll see them 4 or 5 hours later. They're still there playing and having a good time, and you know, it's a fun place.
And for the people viewing or listening, if you can't contribute money, if you can't do hard labor, you can still volunteer doing a lot of things and make a huge difference.
Absolutely, no question.
All right. And with that, I'm going to sign off.
Thank you.
I am the voice of San Joaquin. You are the voice of San Joaquin. We are the voice of San Joaquin. Let's make it a great day.
That was good.